Hi, I'm Snez, personal trainer, healthy lifestyle coach, and your guide to feeling your best. This podcast is a segment from my weekly radio show, Wellbeing Wednesdays, broadcast live on 88.6 Plenty Valley FM. It's all about sharing real, practical tips to help you move more, eat better, and live healthier without the overwhelm. Let's dive in, shall we? Coming up this week, I have had a bit of reflection because I've had a handful of women who I've been working with that we're getting some amazing results, really dropping body fat, increasing their energy, finally feeling like their bodies are working with them and not against them. And they were all so excited. And what I was really interested in was, what were they doing? And it just seems that as we were talking through the conversations, they were all seeming to be telling me the same things. They were all making the similar changes. And I thought, okay, there is a formula here that I'm clearly teaching them that is working. And it was very repetitive for all of the women. There was 4 actually. And I was getting the same feedback. So I thought, okay, I really need to put this in a segment and just share. So when I looked closer, every single one of them was following that same formula. It wasn't a diet, because that's definitely not what I promote. If you're listening to me long enough, you will know that. It wasn't that they went on a challenge or anything like that. They were super strict, but they were just supporting their life with some healthy habit changes, and they were all small things. And what's really interesting is that their translation of these principles and this formula that I'm about to teach you translated different in each and every one of their lives. It showed up in a different way, which was dependent on their culture. It was dependent on their lifestyle. It was dependent on how many children they had, whether they worked, their food preferences, and just their demands of their day-to-day. But the similar principles appeared across all of them. And I thought, this is really fantastic. I really want to share this, but also share that the flexibility in the way that we lead healthier and more active lifestyle needs to be there. Because if we're trying to stick to a rigid plan, amongst those 4 different women that I was working with this week, they all are distinctly different in terms of how many children they have, their age, whether they're working or not. And that's the biggest point. I think we need to be able to take the changes that we are making and apply them to our lives so that it fits with the way that we live, our food preferences, and we definitely want to expand on some of those routines and habits that we have. We do want to make changes, but it has to fit within what we naturally do, because we will always go back to the typical formula that we live by. And the thing is, we can make gradual changes over time, but our habits are very similar. Our routines are very similar, even over years and years. So for me, the best way to help people and to help you to change is take what you're currently doing and just make some small tweaks that are going to have a big impact. So let's have a look at what is that formula that truly make the difference when it comes to reducing body fat, especially in those midlife years as well. So the first one is the non-negotiable, which I always talk about, is strength training. And if you want to reduce body fat, you need to start to build muscle, or you need to engage muscles through workouts. So our muscle mass will naturally decline as we get older. So we lose lean muscle mass. And when we lose lean muscle mass, it means a slower metabolism. It means poorer insulin sensitivity and less strength for your everyday life. So strength training changes all that around, and it keeps your metabolism high. It improves your body composition, and it helps you to feel strong, confident, and capable, and more like you can get out and do some exercise. Now, the biggest thing is, how much exercise were they doing? Were they doing strength training 5 times a week? No. One was doing 1 strength training a week with me and aiming to do 1, maybe 2 at home, but it was more like none to 1 at home. But she was consistently doing the 1 in the gym. The second one was doing 2 a week. The 2 of the members were doing 2 per week and one was doing 3 per week. But we're not talking about training twice a day or doing 6 sessions a week. It's not what we need. Strengthening, stimulating our muscles even twice a week is going to give you some really healthy improvements in your body composition. The next thing was the common theme was definitely hydration. So every one of the women was drinking more water. Now, this was not coming naturally. This wasn't something apart from one that said, yeah, look, Snez, this is just, I just naturally drink water. I've always got my bottle attached to me. I'm sipping throughout the day. I start the day with some hot water. I end with a tea an hour before bed. Not many of them were saying that. A lot of them was like, I'm really trying hard on this one. I'm putting it in my diary. I'm putting alarms on my phone to beep every couple of hours to have a glass of water. I'm filling a 2-litre bottle, whatever it is, but definitely drinking more water is really important. We underestimate oftentimes how much dehydration can impact and increase our cravings, can affect our mood and our metabolism as well. Even mild dehydration can slow fat burning and increase your hunger signals. So aiming for 2 litres a day, starting your morning with a big glass of water before your coffee even, and you'll be amazed at how much better you feel and how much in control of your food choices you feel during the day. The third common theme, and this is the big one, it's the game changer, it's protein and increasing protein into your day-to-day meals, not just at your main meals, but also in your snacks. So protein stabilizes our blood sugar, it keeps you feeling fuller for longer, and it supports lean muscle mass. So if we do start to do some strength training, we need to make sure that the protein intake is there that's going to feed the recovery and give the muscles the building blocks so that they can grow, repair, and get stronger. And a lot of the time we are often under eating on protein, especially women, especially in midlife, and that's one of the biggest mistakes. That's one of the key things that need to turn around quite quickly and initially is to make sure that you're getting protein at each of your meals. Now, a quick summary of what the protein sources are. Anything chicken, fish, meat, all contain protein, as well as soy, tofu-based products, also dairy. Protein is found in greater concentrations in Greek yogurt because it's strained, so it's a more condensed version. But also we do have protein in eggs. We do have protein in legumes. They also do have carbohydrate, but you definitely can use them to up the protein. Nuts, seeds, all contain protein, as well as just including protein powders as well. So make sure that you can have a protein source at every meal, whether that be eggs, Greek yogurt, chicken, tofu, fish, beans, and adding it to the snacks to really get that edge off your hunger at lunch and at dinner time. The next thing is eating every 3 to 4 hours and nothing in between. Now, this has been the one that, again, they have all commented on that they did, and I was super excited because this is bringing conscious awareness to a number of things. Firstly, it's being mindful that we're not mindlessly grazing throughout the day, but it's also about being conscious that we stop at 80%. And that by the next time 3 to 4 hours passes, that we're actually feeling hungry again. When you're nibbling throughout the day, you never actually experience hunger. And hunger is quite important for us to experience throughout the day. It's a signal from our bodies to us that we actually need nutrients, we need calories, and the body is running towards empty. So it will ask for that food. So when we are being mindful to eat every 3 to 4 hours and nothing in between, we can really allow our bodies to go throughout their digestive cycles and their processes, and then we can experience if we are hungry. And so what they were finding is that by pushing themselves to wait 3 to 4 hours to eat again, sometimes 3 to 4 hours later they were hungry and sometimes they weren't. So it was in those moments that they weren't, they were like, oh, that just made me think like I was eating too much at lunchtime. That's why I wasn't hungry for dinner, or I was eating too much at breakfast or my morning snack and then I wasn't hungry at lunchtime. So that awareness of eating every 3 to 4 hours was also was not only impacting the consistency of spacing their meals, but it was helping with no grazing, no picking throughout the day, as well as then making sure that their quantities were being reduced. So then they were starting to pay attention to smaller quantities and seeing how long that food would last for, which is a good, healthy way to pay attention to the signals of our body. So the key is to make sure that each meal is satisfying enough that you feel hungry in preparation for the next meal. You don't want to be hungry again an hour later, because then obviously that's not enough. But we want to feel ready again to eat 3 to 4 hours later. So that's the first 4 steps. We've got strength training. That was the common denominator for sure. Increasing their water intake, adding protein at each of their meals, and eating every 3 to 4 hours, pushing those meals a little bit further apart, but more importantly, not consuming any food or any milky drinks or soft drinks or juices or snacks in between those meals or those snacks, whichever ones they were having. Coming up next, we're going to be talking about step number 5. So what was the next thing that I found that was quite common? And they all mentioned that they stopped eating after dinner, and that was a big thing, because nighttime eating is one of the biggest, I find, roadblocks that I see a lot of when it comes to shifting weight. And the thing is that a lot of the time it's people genuinely being hungry at that time, and probably being too hungry because they've tried to be good all day, which usually translates to eating meals that were too small and not having enough food. So then they get to after dinner time, they're resting, they're settled down, and all of a sudden they realise that they've got this huge hunger that's there because they just haven't consumed enough through the day. So even if you're eating well all day, sometimes there's just that after dinner snacking habit that can add those extra calories in. So avoiding food after dinner is a really important strategy, and one that you can start working on immediately. Now, if you are finding that you are snacking out of habit, a good thing to do is just to make sure that you're removing some of those foods out of the way so they're not accessible to you, or changing where you sit. If you sit in a very similar spot, like on the couch where you retreat with a bag of chips or some biscuits or something like that, we'll sit in a different location. All we're trying to do is bring awareness to that space. Or maybe just brushing your teeth after dinner, which signals that you're done, and everything that you taste from there on is going to feel a bit yuck. So that's a good way to just bring awareness to stop eating after dinner. And the other strategy, though, is that if you are actually hungry at that time, start to add some food, some greater quantities of food and a greater variety of nutrients throughout the day. So I find that making sure that you have a carbohydrate for breakfast is a really good way to balance some of that out, and making sure that we are adding an afternoon snack. So we take the edge off how hungry we are for dinner, but then after dinner we can feel quite satisfied. So I find those two strategies to take the edge off and make sure that we are feeling satisfied after our dinner is going to really help with that snacking after dinner. So that's one that we want to try to make dinner the final meal, and grab your cup of herbal tea, but give your body time to rest and digest overnight. It's one of the best natural fat burning windows that you have, which is that gap between dinner and breakfast. That gap there where you may be active for another couple of hours before you go to bed, the 8 hours that you're asleep, the 6 to 8 hours that you're sleeping, and then waking up, moving around in an hour, that uninterrupted with no food intake is a really great window there. So try to make sure that we stop eating after dinner. Number 6 is to make sure that they are having wholesome, colourful food choices. So a lot of them now, let's make the distinction between they were all moving towards wholesome foods and adding some healthier options, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they were cooking from scratch and spending hours in the kitchen either. So there was working towards the way that their lifestyles work and what the amount of time they have, what they have access to. They're still working within those restrictions that our days do give us, but they were just making better choices. So making sure that there was protein, simplifying it by just cooking up some chicken or even some better quality sausages, which is your protein, pairing that with a salad. So whatever it was, but just making those choices a little bit more wholesome, getting rid of the food processing, and then adding some colourful food choices through fruit and vegetables, seeds and nuts, and just adding all of that extra colour, lots of fibre and lots of freshness. So they weren't being perfect at all. They just made some small, better choices consistently. So even something like adding serving of veggies to your main meals, your lunch, your dinner, and even a snack, or swapping out an ultra-processed snack for a whole options such as getting rid of an afternoon muesli bar and just replacing it with a handful of nuts, for example. What happens is when we do that, when we remove the processed foods, we're generally removing unhealthy fats, high levels of sugar, and what we're replacing it with usually has a lot more fibre, a lot more protein and nutrients along with the food that we're swapping these things out for. So trying to improve the quality of your food with some basic choices, even just adding a salad in. One of the members was saying she just does the pre-cut ones and then just uses olive oil and balsamic vinegar and a bit of salt for a dressing rather than the dressing even that comes with the packet. But even if you are adding that packet dressing, there's not a lot in there. And if it's reducing the quantity of your pasta dish or your pizza, for example, then we are winning and we don't necessarily need to worry about the dressing in that salad. The next thing was to make sure that they weren't getting too upset with themselves when they were getting off track. Now, this could be a really important part because every one of those women had moments where they slipped up, there was a party, a weekend away, a stressful week, travel, whatever it was, but they didn't throw everything out the window. They just got back as best as they can to their next healthy meal or their next workout, or they made better choices while they were out at these events where they couldn't control their intake, which there's going to be lots of moments where we can't control what we consume, but we can, within our choices, make better choices. We can still make sure that we're hydrating. We can still make sure that we're not adding unnecessary calories through the consumption of soft drinks or alcohol or excessive amounts of alcohol anyway. And we can also make sure that we control our quantities and that we stop when we're at 80% full. So not sweating it when you get off track and not beating yourself up and being too hard and just feeling like, nah, this is not for me. That was another thing that definitely stood out, is how flexible and resilient they felt to stick to their healthy lifestyles within a variety of situations that were quite challenging. And the thing is that consistency beats perfection every single time. So just be consistent. Even when it goes off track, that's okay. As soon as you can, just get back on and make the best choices that you can. So the formula for shifting weight and increasing your energy levels and improving your health, it's nothing interesting or nothing new or different that I can present to you, because I'm always presenting the similar sorts of conversation and the points because it's what works. It's strength training. It's drink your water. It's making sure that you're eating protein, adding veggies, spacing out your meals and not grazing or overeating, and making sure that we're not consuming extra or unnecessary calories after our meals and overnight. And above all, just enjoy the process. Your body and you are not going to be perfect, but we know that by following a couple of simple changes out of this formula that you are going to feel a lot better and you're going to be rewarded with energy, with strength and a shape that feels like you again. And remembering, I think the biggest thing is that you do not need to do huge overhauls. Just take what you're currently doing and just make some minor tweaks. Thanks for joining me on this segment from Wellbeing Wednesdays, as heard live on 88.6 Plenty Valley FM. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with someone who might find it helpful and subscribe so you never miss a show. Want to catch the live broadcast? Well, you can tune in Wednesdays from 12 till 2 p.m. on 88.6 Plenty Valley FM, or find my info on Wellbeing Wednesdays with Snez, the Facebook group. Take care, stay healthy, and remember, it's the little choices every day that create big changes. Talk soon.